Get a bit closer like that.
Welcome to Why Different.
Welcome, wherever you're listening to this, to another episode of Wired Different, a podcast that explores neurodiverse creative mind. It is my great pleasure to welcome our first guest on the podcast, photographer, mixed media artist, best friend, Mr. Nedim Nazerali. How are you,
man?
Ned?
Yeah, good, yeah.
Welcome to the podcast.
That's the thing, man. We grew up together from secondary school, didn't we?
Yeah.
We were in the same form class from year 7.
7L.
Wow,
Yeah.
what a journey it's been.
What a journey. It's crazy to be on a podcast together.
Yeah, I know. But it makes sense because, you know, when we were growing up, we were always... One thing that we connected on was music.
Exactly.
Wasn't it?
Yeah.
Remember we used to beat all the kind of beats and all of the little intricate parts of music we used to point out to each other.
Yeah.
And it made us realize that, okay, it's not just me that doesn't listen to the vocals, it's the beat, it's the sound.
Yeah.
And
It's from the Heinz adverts with the
Oh god, no. Turning 37, we can't hit those high notes anymore, boy.
yeah, aside from that. Let me
We have to play that in one of the sessions.
Yeah, one of the 3 songs. Let me introduce you. Ned has a 15-year career in photography, spanning fashion, music, and most recently body painting and fine art, which he uses to find deeper connections with his subjects. Your work has been exhibited internationally. You're exhibiting in Turkey right now and in London. You've captured amazing images for huge brands such as Harrods, Topshop, Cartier, to name a few. Photographs, Rita Ora, Gary Lineker,
Paloma Faith.
Yeah. Let's not forget. And
Quite a few people.
you know, some incredibly stunning stuff, and it's been cool to watch you chase these different ideas and bring in elements from different parts of your life and experiences now.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think that whole journey of me, I always feel that from, you know, graduating from London College of Fashion in 2008, going into the fashion industry as a photographer, I've always been about portraiture. The whole journey for me, it's almost like I haven't had one career, but it's been more of an experiment. How do I like shooting? What do I like shooting? And I've been lucky enough along the way, all of this testing and all the experimentation were jobs. You know, to be honest, to call myself a photographer, I'm not one of those guys that always carries my camera with me all the time. In fact, for someone who doesn't take that many pictures, I wouldn't see myself as a photographer. And throughout my career, people I've worked with have always said, Ned, you're an artist.
Right.
And
So that's how you classify yourself.
I class myself as an artist.
Yeah.
And just like musicians, I think Kano was saying when he picked up an award for something years ago, actually, for Top Boy, he was saying, artists, musicians, if there's other things that you want to do, you're an artist. Don't stick to one medium. And I think that's really important because, yes, people have their niche and have their backbone, and mine is photography. Yes. But we're artists. Our minds work in different ways and we express things in ways that we understand.
Right.
It could be through music, it could be through art, it could be through drawing. And I think that's important for kind of everyone to kind of realize, like, don't put yourself in that box. There are professors that have written books but have taken up photography and art. We're artists, we're creators.
We're here talking about how brains are different. Can you tell us about your experience of neurodiversity?
So I like the word neurodiversity, by the way, because recently a lot of things have been coming up in the mental health era. ADHD, dyslexia, introvert, extrovert. I feel like they've all been used like anything. Something gets noticed and becomes aware of, and people can use it maybe as not an excuse, but I feel like when you give yourself a title, it can actually stop you from growing. So neurodiversity is great because I think it represents what I believe I feel like everyone's minds work in such different ways. Yes, there are people that do have problems with it, and I'm not taking that away from them. There are really serious issues that people have. But with me, I have got elements of ADHD. I'm diagnosed as dyslexic as well.
Right. You're not diagnosed as ADHD?
No. In some way, I've kind of avoided it. I've kind of avoided looking into it and doing that, because there's so much talk around it.
Right.
And I just wanted to see if I can just continue with my journey of self-discovery and learn about how my mind works, understand a bit more about me. And I've used that as a way to find tools and things that I do on the day-to-day to help me and my mind become balanced. Because for me, everything changes when I've got a balanced lifestyle.
Right.
Like, I can have ADHD yesterday when I'm stressed over something, but today I'm all balanced. I've done a few meditations and all this kind of stuff, and I feel good. It's gone.
Right.
Those symptoms go.
Right. And what are the elements that you experience when you talk about ADHD?
I think it's entwined with dyslexia as well. Would be losing focus.
We should probably give an explanation as to what dyslexia is for anybody who doesn't know. I'll go from the scientific point of view,
Dr. George.
and then you can come in and clarify what I'm saying. Because actually, what I've learned as a scientist and as a clinician as well, but who experiences this, is that there is a very big difference between what is understood by the neurotypical clinician and what is experienced by the neurodivergent individual themselves. And so dyslexia is a learning disorder that affects reading and language related tasks, and that can make it difficult for people who have it to make the links between sounds that they hear and the letters and words that they match to. So when people have dyslexia, especially in childhood, one of the things that you see is difficulty with reading at a good pace without making mistakes, and sometimes they struggle with comprehension, spelling. But it's important to clarify early on that it's not a problem with intelligence. It's
and we're clever. We're clever as fuck.
Exactly, yeah. High functioning. Typically it's the brain working in a slightly different way, whereby it's the processing. So, like, a computer doesn't lose the ability to handle very complex tasks, but the retrieval mechanisms,
it's
and
the processing
is what can affect one computer compared to another.
Right. Well, that's what I got in my 1-inch thick diagnosis passport of my symptom.
What's that?
They called it the dyslexic passport, and it was just a thick piece of A4 paper, lots of pages of just things. I'll be honest, I can't remember what it says in it. I don't think I've read it properly, but it was about my processing speed, taking things in, which makes sense, because when I was doing those written tasks after reading something, if I read a sentence and I was asked questions about something or asked to write down answers about that passage, I would struggle.
Right.
So it was taking things in and logging it in.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, other symptoms like me just not listening, when something is too much for me to take in that moment of time, in that, let's call it pressured context, in half an hour or 20 minutes, I need to learn this. It's too much for me. So I probably just kind of lose focus on it.
Right.
And I think that happens when I interact with people as well sometimes. If something's not interesting me, if something's not giving me energy or that stimulates me, I do lose concentration very quickly.
Yeah.
And
Conditions that come under the umbrella of neurodiversity often have quite similar features. I guess the science is a bit underdeveloped to really be able to tell us if there are like actual boundaries between different conditions. But what you describe is something that's very commonly experienced in ADHD.
Right.
That,
there you go.
Unless you're stimulated by something, you find it really difficult to concentrate on it.
And by the way, I don't think that's a bad thing, because I've avoided a lot of crap in my life.
Nice.
Things that I didn't need to have in my life.
Yeah.
I focus on the things that interests me.
That is something
You block out all the blur.
that I recognise about you, because you've always been very determined, but also you've had that pathway. Like I remember in like GCSE time when which like subjects should we pick and stuff, and I'm thinking, should I be picking humanities? Should I be picking sciences? Should I be picking arts? Whatever. And you were kind of, okay, I'm doing art and I'm doing the creative ones, but then in addition to that, then I'll do like science.
I struggled with the others around it because I knew that wasn't really for me. I knew what was working for me.
Yeah, and you've always had a kind of a good path, and by that I mean, unlike me, you haven't been so distracted by other opportunities, like, you know, which is, I don't know, maybe
well, I think it's weird because I think with the path you've gone down in terms of medicine, I think that's very kind of structured and focused on that. Whereas me, on my path, I can twirl off to other things easily.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like after studying fashion photography at London College of Fashion, we're not guided to what you can do after. Editorial photographer, commercial photographer, does it have to be fashion? Can it be portraiture? It's kind of up to us. It was very open, which I felt like there wasn't that much guidance, to be honest. But at the same time, that's been my life throughout. You know, I've always been left to choose what I wanted to do. My parents always supported me in what I wanted to do. If I wanted to be a doctor, I could have been. If I wanted to be this, I could have been. They supported me, whatever made me happy. And that carried on into my further education as well, you know, deciding what to do and what angle to go in when I graduated. And
tell me about London College of Fashion, because that of course is a big deal to go to London College of Fashion. And you also went straight from high school. You didn't do a foundation?
Yeah, I was lucky. I saved a year.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's still a thing now that most people do a foundation before starting, but I remember at the time it was like, that was a big deal.
Yeah,
you know,
you needed to do one. I think now, even since the 70s, since when my mum went to Central St. Martin's, the fashion degree, fashion design, even then you need to have a foundation course a year, which is try and pottery, try and painting, try and photography. But because I already had a diverse portfolio, I applied for the Central St. Martin's, got that. Then I applied for the degree, got that. I went straight into the degree because I had a portfolio of life drawing, I had a portfolio of photography, and it was lucky because of our school. We had those facilities.
And you also...
And I knew what I wanted.
Yeah. And you went on to do really well at London College of Fashion.
Yeah. I'm quite surprised, to be honest. Like...
That's interesting because you got first in your dissertation, right?
Yeah. When my tutor told me, I was like, how? I'm dyslexic. You're
surprised, I imagine. Why are you surprised, actually? Why are you surprised?
I'm surprised, but not surprised. I'm not surprised because, again, throughout my whole education, I was always getting average scores. But when we had the final exams or whatever, above average, as far as I could get to. It's the same with London College of Fashion. All the pre-years, I was always just above average, did okay. But then when it got down to the work, I managed. I was also surprised because someone who's diagnosed as dyslexic at uni, to get a first, I felt like maybe I was more kind of proud. I was surprised and proud. But again, I understand how and why I was able to get a first. I understood by then, okay, I work in a different way. And as long as I work in that way that works for me, it might take longer than everyone else. I might get more stressed and give myself a hard time. But if I do the work, I can get a high grade.
Right.
You know, so that was a big learning curve about me as well. Like it picked me up a bit.
That's interesting. I experienced it in different ways, but at school, I was always able to do the traditional subjects. They came quite naturally. And so I had that.
I mean, you worked hard though.
Yeah.
I couldn't work at like how hard you worked. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
So focused and thing.
Yeah. But I think that's the thing. I think, it comes down to what is stimulating you and motivating you, because that's what I think has happened here. You perhaps weren't stimulated by traditional subjects. And therefore you were given at an early stage an idea that, oh, you're not that good or intelligent, whatever it might be. But then when you had the opportunity to dive into one that you were interested in, and you flew to the point where you kind of surprised yourself. And I think that's important to highlight, because there will be a lot of young people who will be dissuaded by the fact that they don't excel in the traditional subjects, and that might be for whatever reason. They haven't got the right encouragement, the right tools. They haven't found the subject that really motivates them. We're fortunately starting in schools to direct kids towards the things that they want to do and the things that they're likely to therefore excel in because they're passionate about them. Which I think is infinitely more useful than insisting that they do 9 subjects that aren't going to help them going forward.
Just put some more stress on the actual subject that you do enjoy.
And you also mentioned that you were diagnosed at university. So how was that, like, learning this new thing about yourself when so much of your life has already happened?
Well, firstly, it made me realize, I think it was coming to the end of year 2, I wanted to get diagnosed. Our uni was offering it. Also, what was a highlight was that you get a free computer and you get a free printer. I was like, do you know what? I need to take this opportunity.
And wasn't it?
And it was a Mac, big, whatever inch Mac, or, you know, not even a MacBook. And I kind of thought, well, listen, I am struggling with those bigger pieces, the dissertations and stuff. I think I need a bit more help than just having my weekly tutor. So
you had a tutor as well.
We had a tutor for our classes, and every week we'd go in and just give him an update of what we've been up to, what we've been writing, and he'll just guide us.
Right.
So I wanted a bit more support because I had all of these points in my dissertation and ways I could go, and I just needed to someone just to help me focus on, okay, stick to that. And yeah, I was diagnosed as dyslexic. Got my computer, got my printer. But what it made me realize is that, okay, my whole life, the first thing I thought was, throughout my whole education, from primary school to mainly secondary school, I lived with this without realizing, and that's where my struggles came from.
You mean your struggles came from the fact that you didn't understand why you struggled with these things? I realized that I was struggling through my education, and this is the reason why: my slow processing speed, right?
The way my mind works. But I think that the year I got diagnosed, I think that was a perfect time to do it anyway, because I think I was emotionally mature enough not to let it beat me down. I think in school, we were used to teachers coming in the middle of our classes saying, oh, for people who need extra special help and needs, they would bring them out in front of everyone. I don't know how I would have felt with that, like that, with you having that.
That was wild.
Yeah. I don't think, and again, I think it just reminds me of secondary school. And again, when we were talking about things that I enjoyed learning, and things that I had to take on, like English and history, I'll be honest with you, I am interested in history. I'm interested in English literature. Love those stories, Shakespeare stories, and learning all of that. But I wasn't stimulated. I feel like it was a style of teaching that was too pressurizing and too formatted, that didn't allow me to enjoy it. Whereas with art, he'll talk a bit about creative stuff, and then we'll get on and create.
Yeah.
And it felt comfortable, it felt peaceful in that art studio, in the darkroom, which really brought me back to, well, really caught my interest in photography, was using that darkroom.
Yeah.
And it was the environment, whereas the conventional way of teaching literature, English, history, and it didn't work for me. From the textbooks, reading this and writing that out, that doesn't work for me.
What was it about, say, being in the dark room? I know that was only one part of the process you're talking about. What is it about that process that appealed to you, particularly now looking back as neurodivergent?
Do you know what? When I was in that dark room, there were times when not really many people were in there. Sometimes it'd be me on my own, and if there was quiet, you couldn't really see. But I had my earphones in, having that, being in my own world again, consciously, was just amazing. Having that peace in my environment whilst just waiting for something magical to happen, and that was these prints to magically appear, and just seeing what we would get. I just loved being in my own space. I loved being me there, and that is really what made me feel like, okay, I feel comfortable here. I feel happy here in this quiet space of solitude when there's so much chaos going on around the school.
Yeah.
You know how lunchtimes were. Everyone like,
Yeah.
it's great. I loved school. I looked forward to going to school and having my friends and doing stuff and playing football and all kind of stuff. I love that. I love school. I enjoy school so much. But having that peace was like, yeah, this is like Ned. This is me, the Ned that my family saw when I was younger, or people I'm really, really comfortable with that chilled out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We went to Boys Comprehensive in North London, and it was a madness.
Mad. It was mad.
Like,
I was mad and I loved it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I remember when we got there year 7 and we saw the year 10s and 11s, and we were like, these guys are scary. Yeah. We saw fights, we saw these aggressive year 11s. I was like, oh my God. And there was a lot of groups there, a lot of bad things happen, a lot of fights, a lot of violence, and stuff like that. But we had our groups, you, me, a few of our other friends. We were those kind of neutral characters. We enjoyed it. We enjoyed having the jokes and the laughs. And I think that's what really made my education. I loved it. It was so much fun.
It was a great time.
I remember when you and another guy from my class, in our English class, rapped the Eminem song.
Really?
In front of everyone. Do you remember?
Who? No.
You and Musa.
Musti. Oh my God. Which Eminem
you rapped the song, not My Name Is...
Real Slim Shady?
The Real Slim Shady. You rapped the whole thing in our English class, and Mr. Long, you remember Mr. Long? He was there. He must have thought, what the hell are these guys on about?
I can't remember this.
Yeah, 8.
But you've got this crazy memory for events like that.
That's one thing about me. My memory is, I remember everything. I remember everything. I don't know why.
Yeah, no, you do actually.
I don't remember
it. Yeah, and that's the thing, because some, different neurodivergents have problems with, often with the working memory, which is the memory for something that's happening kind of now, like, a telephone number or, somebody's name or something.
Yeah, I mean, that I'm bad with. I'm bad with names.
Yeah, but then actually the stuff...
But experiences stick with me.
Yeah.
Those memories, experiences where there's feeling, there's laughter, there's joy, something happened. Those stick with me. Visually, I can see you in that English room rapping. And
that's the thing, because the neuroscience of it, and I don't know it like to a huge degree, but the different parts of your brain have access to storing memories, and if you take them in through different parts, so part of your brain, say at the front, is for sort of planning and carrying out actions,
right?
The part towards the back is for vision, on the sides it's temporal lobes is for auditory processing, and then you have your memory zones. And when you take things in from combined methods, and when you attach emotion to them, they embed far more easily, because essentially, instead of just using one route to get to the memory zone, you kind of get one in from your visual, some in from your auditory, some in from your sense, the touch or the feel of it all, and then the emotional side as well, which all kind of helps to embed those memories more, which is probably why you remember, as you say, the experiences that gave you an emotion, and you remember all the different elements of them. And
sometimes I have a memory of things in the past and the smell of it, when you just like walking down the road and I smell something, it takes me back to a memory as well. So it's amazing how our senses work, and how the collective of our senses just creates this immersive experience for us.
Absolutely.
Isn't
it? That ties us nicely into the next bit, which we'll talk about in terms of neurodiversity and your experience in art. But we'll take a quick break before we do that.
Okay, great.
Welcome back to the Why Different podcast. Welcoming photographer Nedim Nazerali. Before we take a break, Ned, you mentioned how a sense of smell can take you back to an emotion. In medical school, you do so many exams and learning facts, and it becomes really difficult to keep any of those after it's gone, because every fact you remember was just another page in a book. So it became difficult years afterwards to remember all the things that you've been examined on, even though you passed the exam.
Yeah.
But when you learn something on the job, you have patient story about their life or their family or what this condition means for them, and you're able to like hang your memory of the disease or the treatment of it on that person. And so I have memories of patients which allow me to remember if you've had a really bad break of your leg or something like that, and how you manage it, because I remember that story. So it's so much easier to attach memories onto emotions and
Learn.
and I understood that, but I think I understood it a lot better when I was thinking about creative things. For example, music, different sounds or instruments would evoke types of feelings. Or if I've listened to a song from years gone by, like Frank Ocean's Siegfried, and every time I hear that song, the bit towards the end, where it's like, when he starts singing, it's like a specific flavor of adrenaline that I feel. And you get that
a memory, a feeling.
But it's like a specific. It's like a specific
how
flavor.
Specific? What do you mean?
As in, I can tell that flavor. We all know that if you get scared, you're going to have a release of adrenaline, right? And it's going to feel a certain type of way. But if I have that memory, I remember a very specific time in my life, and then that gives me the flavor of
that time.
Of adrenaline. It's that same feeling that I had at that time. Which is interesting. And I wonder if I could do a thought experiment, it would be that if you could inject somebody with adrenaline of this flavor that I was speaking about, would they automatically think of that event or that moment? And I think so. I think it's kind of like what you're saying, like you smell one thing and it takes you to a specific emotion, or a specific person. It'll be like grandma or something like that.
A moment.
And that's one of the cool things about knowing about neurodiversity and that you have it, because then you start being able to give context to some of these things that perhaps you always thought were just you being quite
where
weird.
You're taking things on from different places in the mind. Because I feel like as a creative, as you know, because obviously being a surgeon but also being a musician, opening that creativity, opening different parts of your mind, opening yourself up to creativity, to imagination, to smell, to sound, to feeling, I think that also can open you up to neurodiverse elements, because you are opening yourself up to a wider spectrum of things. Whereas if you're focusing on a job or doing surgery, you're just focusing on that. Do you know what I mean? There's steps to it, right? That you've learned. And whereas with creativity, it's kind of like spontaneous in a way, I feel like. You've got to feel it in the moment as well and not plan it so much.
I was wondering if that was what you were alluding to when you were talking about the being in the darkroom. I remember I was going to ask you actually at the time, you've taken that photograph, you saw something that made you want to take that photograph of it. And I know there'll be a story behind why you wanted to take this photograph specifically. Is that element of feeling your way and being in the darkroom and waiting for this image to become like almost like a reality? Part of the allure for you? No,
definitely, because like now it's harder when you've got working with digital, because you get the instant results. Here you're really focusing on taking that one shot. You're not wasting 100 shots. One shot, beautiful lighting and shadow in the scene, right? Composition, subject matter, and in the darkroom you're waiting for that reveal, for that image to come up. It could be overexposed, it could be underexposed, but it was really nice just to wait for that moment. And I felt a sense of achievement and creating something. It was like really hands-on. It's that second stage of creating something, as opposed to taking a photograph and then seeing the image. Like this was the second stage of being hands-on and creating it. And I think that was very self-gratifying.
Man.
Again, it's the environment made a big difference for me. Being in the darkroom, listening to my visions, listen to that whisper saying, do this and take this shot because of this. Being in my own world there, which I was like as a kid, always in my own world, missing things. I was finally able to be in my own world, but have a reason for it, to focus on creating something. That was just amazing.
What you mentioned about waiting for the result and the excited anticipation of it, I can identify with that in a sense, because in plastic surgery we do a lot of skin cancers. Lots of skin cancers are caused by sun damage, and so you're talking about highly exposed areas, the face being one of the most important, because you've got critical structures and structures of somebody's identity. And so when you take them out, you're creating a defect in their face. But our job is to use understanding of patterns and aesthetics and light and how it falls on different parts of the face to be able to
for the construction of it.
Exactly, to reconstruct it.
So you have to foresee what you want the end result to be, factoring these things like, okay, if the shape of this skin is like this or this tight, you'd be thinking about when light shines on it or when you see it, is it got that aesthetic that you want?
100%. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the areas that this most applies to is on the nose. We're very aware of the different ways in which light falling on certain parts of the nose, we call them subunits. We divide it up into 9 subunits in the nose, and therefore we have different ways of reconstructing each subunit. So where the cancer falls completely determines the type of operation you do, and you absolutely plan it a lot before. And is that anticipation of
what's the final outcome going to be?
Exactly. So you've thought about it beforehand. You've designed the reconstruction that you're going to do to try and give them as aesthetically pleasing and as natural an outcome as you can. So you want to hide the scars in the natural creases, and you don't want to put skin of a different color or texture somewhere else.
That's nice to hear as well, because a lot of people are conscious about, especially noses. It's a big thing. People get their noses reconstructed. It's a thing that's right there in the middle of your face. So to know that in surgery, you consider that as well, rather than getting the job done and fixing that bridge and fixing that whatever it is. It's nice to know that. And I suppose it requires you having that certain type of connection with who that person is as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? But when you were saying that the final outcome, would you mean how the skin is reflected, or the shape? Is it simply the shape of it?
First of all, the most important part of the operation is to remove the cancer, right? But then,
so how does that work? Is there cancer? When there's skin cancer, is the skin on there? Is the skin on the face, or is it deteriorated or something?
You usually get like a growth, like a mole or something that just grows, and those you remove that, and then you reconstruct it to try and make that area look as good as you can, and it's somebody's identity. And so we really take a lot of care and consideration when reconstructing and planning.
So you have to deconstruct it to reconstruct it, in a sense.
No, so you take out the cancer, but then when you've taken out the cancer, you've got a hole, essentially. Of course. Yeah, and so you have to fill that hole. It's
like sculpture,
in a similar way, and you want to, like I say, you want to hide the scars and not disrupt the contours as best you can.
Definitely sounds like there's a side of art, element of art.
Absolutely, a huge element of it. Yeah, so you have to be
and creativity, because can you imagine there's people that can't draw a straight line with a ruler, like literally are so bad at art to construct a nose or part of the face or whatever. That requires a good eye. Yeah,
it's very gratifying, exactly as you said. And there is that anticipation, and it is quite an excitement when you're waiting to see how they've healed and they come back.
It must be scary as fuck, though. So are we allowed to swear in this?
Yeah, of course.
It must be scary as fuck. Imagine, oh my gosh, it comes, the mask comes off and then the nose is wonky, or you could, oh gosh, I can't even imagine. I'll be more scared doing that because you're dealing with someone's,
Yeah, of course. It's cool that and I think what I've learned as I've become more senior is my ability to do that really depends a lot on my ability to keep my creative juices flowing. So that means that writing music, for example, actually is a really important part for me of being a good plastic surgery trainee.
Right,
because I find that when I don't, I'm sure you've had it from...
do you know what? It sounds like to me, because something that resonates with me is that I can only create when I'm in the right place.
All right.
When I'm feeling good. What makes me feel good? Music.
Yeah.
If I can put on a tune and it makes me feel good, I can just get on with my work because I'm in that mode.
Right.
When I'm not feeling good, I'm unbalanced. I'm thinking about 100 things at once. I'm not getting the work done. I'm stressing. And something like music can pick one up to give them the confidence to make the decision.
Right. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I find that for a lot of people that I've come across, having those creative outlets gives your brain a sense of happiness, and probably you're releasing a lot of endorphins, etc. And you just feel a bit more in a mood to a bit more open, as you say.
Open. And I think confidence is a big thing.
Absolutely.
Because if someone's stressing, is that person going to be confident enough to actually create something or produce something or make something? Because you're just not balanced, is it?
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think that's a huge thing. That's what I meant to say. I think you've articulated it really well. Needing to be creative outside of work to be able to be good and creative inside of work.
Yeah. Because imagine the day before surgery, something which happens in everyone's life, something comes up in your life which is a challenge, which is hurtful, which is puts you in a mood, would you say that affects your productivity in the surgery? Or it can affect your productivity, focus, and all that kind of stuff when you're doing that surgery? I'm guessing it can.
We're all going to have times when things happen outside of work, but for us, it's the good thing is that if it were to be so significant that it would throw you off, then your colleagues would be there to pick up the slack. And, you know, say, look, I'm not sure I could do this one today. And your colleagues would fill in and make sure that the patient receives the right care. But often it's not that significant, and it is a case of learning to handle those emotions, and you do have to go through that trial. And I think that in getting through those, if you are quite a creative person, you relaxed by the fact that if I find a challenge, I'll think of a way out of it. And I think that's one of the bits that I'm quite happy about, because I'm quite an anxious person in general, but when it comes to like high pressure situations, especially like clinical situations,
you can deal with it.
It's almost like I get a lease of calmness, because I'm just like, oh, my brain's going to kick in with a creative solution. And not innovative, but it might be that, I'm going to recall something that would solve this problem.
I guess that your 7 years of studying and more is about that, isn't it? That's the kind of pattern. It's finding a solution. So when it comes to that and focusing on that and getting a solution, boom, you're just, that strength is there.
And I think that's part of what drives a lot of people who end up in hospital medicine to do it, because there is that kind of inherent risk of like shit going left really quickly with a patient, and you having to like almost jump into action and to handle it. But cool. So
amazing.
Next thing I wanted to go on to, Ned, was your career. And you talked a bit about your experiences of dyslexia as a child. Are those different now as an adult?
I think there are aspects of neurodiversity that had left my life since I was a younger, but other things that I've maybe picked up. When I was younger, for example, that like zoning out and missing what people have said, that kind of went. Now that I have more of a focus in life, as you get older, you know what you want to do, you got your aims and desires, things that you want to create and do. I've got more of a focus. So I think a lot of that has gone, but other things I've picked up is losing focus in other ways. And I think that has a lot to do with my environment. As an artist, working from home a lot, in the comfort of my home, that environment definitely affects how I concentrate and how productive I am with my work.
And are you more productive at home?
Bit of both, because sometimes when creating, I need that peace and quiet. But then when I'm out in a cafe or environment where I can do work there, it's different. I can just get things done. But then I lack a bit of concentration as well, because a lot is going on. So there's pros and cons, really.
It's a big topic at the moment. Like,
but I've heard
those who work at home, whereas before they didn't. It's a real trade-off.
I think it's good to be in social settings in general for people's confidence. It's like reading and writing. If you keep doing it, you get better at it and you get more focus and all that kind of stuff. When you take yourself away from social places, environments, you get used to that peace and quiet. You get too comfortable. And I definitely have struggled with that. And also
in social environment.
A social environment.
Interesting. I know that to be true, but then again, there's so many times when I've been anxious about social situations and thought, how would Ned handle this situation? Because you're always somebody who I've all known to be very good at bringing people together and socializing. And I think actually probably we used to do it more. So we used to practice it a lot more, because our lives were very much more outside. But since we've gotten older, we spend less time out and more time in. I guess,
which is not a bad thing. It's a good
less.
thing. We need to focus on our careers and our future and stuff like that. That's just, I think it's part of the life.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just a normal, it's the direction that life takes us. We can't be 18-year-old crazy guys forever. But I guess you don't practice it so much, you know, the social aspects. So then maybe it makes you a little bit more focused on the fact that it's not so natural anymore. Is that what you find?
Yeah, I feel like the social part, it's a lot more effort.
Right.
Do we have that energy for the effort? I just there have been times years ago where me and Lily went to a friend's birthday, and it's just like I was just standing there, just not feeling connected. I just felt uncomfortable. I had some sort of social anxiety, and maybe it was a time that I was just. I think there's reasons for it. I think I was going through a lot, and I think before we can give and connect, we have to have a sense of value and love for ourselves. We need to feel confident. We need to feel good. That's everything for me. And in that specific time, I just wasn't feeling good. So if I'm not feeling good, I can't conversate with someone and have a good time.
Right.
That is to do with experiences in life. Meeting people through work, old friends, having fallouts, feeling betrayed. I don't like to blame people for experiences you have. I always look at, okay, why did I have the experience? If someone treated me badly, I always have to look at what could have I done different to not allow that. And I think that's just a part of growth. I think, for example, if someone is too nice, you can get taken advantage of. You know, if I'm doing work for a company and I give them more than I need to, but that's just how I work. You give them extra help and assist them because you want the final outcome to be good. They ask for more. And sometimes they go past your boundaries a bit. I think having experiences in life, which I think is just normal, and we just need to learn and grow from it. Everyone goes through those. We need to feel those different sorts of pains and feelings. I think it was a time where those just brought me down. And at the same time with my career, it was reflected where I was at with my career. I'm always moving forward. I'm never, okay, I'm a photographer, working in the fashion industry, doing editorials. That's all I'm doing. No, It wasn't enough. One thing is never enough. So there's me always going in and transitioning into my next stage of my career of what I want to do or what I want to create to satisfy my needs. So that also reflected how I dealt with situations in life. So I think our environment and experiences has been something that's brought me down because I've been very highly sensitive. I realize I'm a very highly sensitive person.
And was that always the case? Or have you found it difficult or different as you've become an adult?
I think more difficult as I've become an adult because there are more demands on life, which again is normal. There's nothing wrong with that, but I've maybe dealt with it in a immature way with mentally, maybe because I was mentally weak through past experiences. I think it's a collaboration of so many things, but I remember being a kid and me comfortable in my own world, me chilled. I was known as, like, my parents used to say I could just fall asleep standing up. Like, I was the most chilled out person. But as I grew older, as you meet different people, social circles, settings in my career as well, the fashion industry, stuff like that, you experience chaos. You experience people acting in ways that are not morally right for you. Do you know what I mean? And I get sensitive about those things. When really and truly, when people say you don't care about what other people think or do, it's true. I was taking on all of that because I felt this is what's right for me. That person's doing it that in that way. I don't agree with it. And that brings me down. That sensitivity in me does affect me. I think at times I care too much, to be honest.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, what do you think that tells you about yourself? But you answered that. You described a lot of things that you take responsibility for the way you're feeling about things. And what do you think about that? And the reason I ask is because as you get older, you accumulate scars. That's how it works, right? Which I think probably accounts for some of why we're carefree as a youngster and more anxious and perhaps alert for danger.
Definitely.
And reading Sapiens, the novel, which is a good history of humankind, and from reading other things, is it's talking about how we as humans became the dominant species, etc. And most essentially is because we were able to and not think all the other predators, which really should have eliminated us a long time ago. And a big part of that was because we have the most sophisticated defense system, essentially. And it makes sense because when you think about it, which are the most powerful countries in the world? Those who have the most sophisticated defense systems. But ours is the defense system that you can smell, hear, see, or perceive danger before it presents itself, and so you can avoid it or get away from it. And we have to remember that's what's actually kept us here. And that was when we were hunter-gatherers and stuff. But now we live in a time where we don't have to worry so much about lions and bears and whatnot, but we still have these hypersensitive defense systems, which are the reason we've managed to get here, right?
Wow.
And so,
like instead of taking on using those skills for, and the protecting ourselves and being in like in nature, now it's so many other things. It's things that we're fed through social media, TV, people, experiences.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Our defense systems are there for us to detect danger. And when you detect danger, like when we were back in the field, and like when you're afraid now.
And we shouldn't be detecting danger of people and stuff now.
Sorry?
We shouldn't be detecting danger right now of things, really, in a sense. What dangers should we be aware of? When it comes to walking down the street and you see a gang of people, that's not a normal thing for us. We should be connecting.
Yeah.
We're all one. We all should be connecting, but we have to be careful.
That's the thing. I think what we know is that our defense system, our brain, is so sophisticated that we don't know most of how it works, right? And so if it's giving us shots of adrenaline or making us feel anxious about stuff, it's because it's telling us that it is perceiving danger.
Right.
And like with wild animals and stuff, we call it instinct, but actually I wonder if it's so much of that, or is it that we can't always recognize that actually our hyper alert defense system is telling us that something about this scenario makes me feel unsafe. And that might be, I think,
and that comes to experience, isn't it? You build that up.
Exactly, that's it. So I think that as we've grown older and we've started accumulating scars, our defense system has adapted, so it doesn't now worry about lions and bears and gorillas. It now worries about, that thing gave me a scar before. When I saw somebody who behaved towards me like that, I ended up with a scar.
We experience it so much.
And so every time you experience a scenario like that, even when it might not have reached your consciousness, your defense system's always on, and it's hyper alert. And it might be telling you that, oh wow, this scenario that you're in, you gave you a scar once, and so maybe you feel anxious. I wonder if understanding that and peeling back those layers and trying to understand, what about this scenario makes me feel unsafe, or why am I getting this response from my defense system that something's up? It might be that it's just too highly sensitive, and like your alarm at home that just keeps going off for no reason, and you just have to reset it or something and be like, okay, cool, there's nothing here to worry about, let's just try and chill and let's try and have a good time or whatever. But otherwise it can often be because actually there is danger, and we just need to identify what that is.
Why? Because sometimes we feel danger of things that are not dangerous, but we're just sensitive about.
Absolutely. I think I remember this was really poignant for me when I was doing my PhD, and we always do lab presentations of your work. Everyone has a go every week. It changes, and it's hardcore. The level of expectations high because everybody's very good, and so I would find that I'd start having anxiety. And I remember there was one time I was sat on the computer, and it got to 2:00. And I stopped. I was like, what is wrong? Like, I've been anxious all day. What's going on? And I remember actually sitting back from the computer and being like, what is it going on? And starting going through the checklist. Am I worried about this? Am I worried about that? And then it was like, there's nothing else.
Like intense. You were feeling intense.
I was just feeling, really like anxious about something I couldn't really identify it. And then I realized, I was looking at the calendar and I was like, I've got a lab meeting next Thursday and I haven't even started to prepare.
That's in the back of your mind, knowing that you have to be prepared for that.
Exactly. And it was that. But once I figured that out, I was like, okay. So then I started on that day prepping for the lab meeting. And then I became less and less anxious. And then literally the second I finished the lab meeting, all anxiety is gone. And I might have otherwise attributed that to something else.
It's funny. It's interesting how you forgot about that in the week. Because with me, I find that anxiety could come from, I'm doing a job. I'm on the computer editing, for example. But I know this week, all I want to do is create art. All I want to do is create art. But I'm saying in my head, I'm already thinking about what I'm going to be doing in 2 days' time when I finish this. So all of that is in my head consciously.
Does that make you feel anxious?
Do you not know? And I it's weird because anxious, I don't get anxious. I don't get anxiety. I don't anxious attacks. The anxiety I have the most is really overthinking. Worrying. Worrying is my anxiety. I don't get heart palpitations. I don't feel like I'm having a breakdown, or I can't feel, because I feel like I've always been very aware. I think as a person, since from a kid I've always been comfortable because I've always been aware of my surroundings. And it's not just me seeing that. I can do that easily without even looking. My aura can feel it. I can feel tension over there. And that's how I've navigated my life. If I'm walking through a certain situation, I can move away from that situation. I've always navigated my life through feeling. I've opened up my aura and I've been able to feel things. I've never been anxious where it's affected my physical health, apart from just worrying. Yeah. And there's been one or two occasions where my worries got so much that I have to speak to someone about Lily, so I have to speak to her about it. This is what's worrying me, and she'll get me out of it. And it's sometimes really silly.
But do you think it has to get to that before you do something about it? Because I know,
because I'm not used to worrying in such a way where I need someone's opinion. Usually I just deal with it. But the anxiety thing is good. I'm always very chilled out, and I think that's always kept with me as a kid. I've always been able to control that. And not get into an attack where something's taken over me and I'm feeling like panicking and stuff. That doesn't happen.
Yeah. How does neurodiversity interacts, if in any way, with your artistic endeavors? Like some people, for example, have distractibility, and that helps them to become creative because they can be quite abstract in their thoughts, and that can help them paint. Or people hyper focus, which allow them to really drive home. Do you find that there are characteristics of your neurodiversity that either help or hinder your creative process?
I think there's a bit of both. I think firstly, when I'm doing my creative endeavors and just creating, body painting someone or editing, that comes so naturally. I'm in my comfortable space. It just comes out of me naturally. I don't need to think about it. I've already got that natural focus there. Not too over focused, not little focus. I use spontaneity as well to create a feel in the moment. And I've always done that with my photography and my portraiture. I'll shoot different people. I could shoot you in 5 different days and you'll get a completely different vibe. It depends on your vibe. It depends on my vibe. And I capture how you're feeling at the moment. And that just happens naturally. So letting go in my art, which is a neurodiverse issue when I'm having a meeting with someone. So I can't let go like that when I'm having a meeting. I need to really focus on what they're saying, taking it in and responding. I can't just let go how I do my artwork when I'm having that meeting. It's just 2 different vibes I have to be in. When I'm in another dimension, I'm in my own world with that person and we're collaborating and creating. In the meetings, it has to be more constructed when we're thinking about ideas and stuff like that, or planning something. For example, when I do my filmmaking work, I find that my mind works in 2 different spectrums and 2 different ends really well, but if they cross over, it can sabotage it. So when I'm directing a film, already for the past week, we've been planning it, 2 weeks, we've been planning it, a couple of days before, writing shot lists. I know exactly what shot needs to be done there. Once we've done that, I don't need to worry about, was that enough? The shot's done. We've already pre-thought about it. So I can control a whole crew and plan and direct it.
Right.
And no, okay, let's not shoot it like that, because in the future we're going to have that problem with cutting the shot.
Am I right in thinking that you're saying when you are directing, it's a different skill set that you have to use to when you're creating?
I think it's definitely a different skill set. I need to be a bit more switched on.
Right.
Because now I'm dealing with people. When I'm doing my artwork, I'm just creating the artwork. Here, I'm dealing with people. I'm dealing with timing. I'm dealing with the angle of this shot, making sure that person's got that sound ready. It's so much. And I love doing it because I feel in control. I love feeling in control. And things just happen well. But bringing that vibe into my artwork, when I'm creating artwork or body painting or shooting my crystals for my crystal artwork, I'm in a completely different vibe. I'm in a completely different space and a mindset.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the difference. But then if I am creating artwork and I'm in my studio and I'm editing an image that I've created, now I'm just with me, my mind and my own space. That leaves room for overthinking. That leaves room for me thinking, okay, is this enough? Can I stop here? Is that artwork done? So it's having that balance of letting go into the artwork, being creative, but knowing when to stop and not thinking about it too much. Whereas on set, I got to think so detailed.
Right.
And that happens naturally as well in that environment, context.
And how do you know when it's done? and when to stop?
So with my artwork, I'll know because I already know what I want it to look like.
So
Yeah.
you start off knowing.
Yeah, I already know that if I want to shoot this green specific crystal, I want to have a nice bright pink background on it. Boom, nice and strong, simple, impactful. Because I know that's going to work with the light shining through the artwork as well. But then sometimes what can throw you off, again with shooting portraits and with certain lighting, I use a lighting, I want there to be shadow there and a lighting there, and I want it to have a bit of blur to give it a bit of movement. I'm experimenting on the day with the subject, and I could come into the studio, look at the image as that it's not exactly how I saw it in my head, so I've got to tweak it a bit. And usually that's the case, because with photography, when you're shooting in RAW, things are desaturated. It's not the final outcome. You've got to make it the final outcome. That's like the second stage. But sometimes it's like you have to really rework something to get what you want. But again, it's always going by that vision I already had from the beginning, you know?
Yeah. And as a freelancer, you have to manage both the creative side and the non-creative side.
Yeah.
The admin. Exactly. And
Taxes.
for a lot of people, it's difficult to manage the non-stimulating, non-creative elements.
I love it.
How do you... Well,
I love it, bruv.
Wow.
When I'm sending those invoices, I'm happy, bro. I want that money. Honestly, I'm like, I want to send these Monday morning. I want to send the 3 invoices. I want to get paid so fucking quick. I just want to get paid. Done the job. But those are usually the jobs where they're not the jobs that are feeding my soul. Right. They're the jobs that have skill in.
Yeah.
In photography and film, whatever. And I'm doing a job for someone, right? I can't wait to do that. I'm going to send that. Sometimes I feel like I'm sending invoices too quick. I'm like, these guys are going to think all I'm thinking about is money.
Before you've even done the shot.
I haven't even asked them, check the drafts. Is there anything else you want tweaked? No, fuck that shit. Images are done. This is what I'm giving you. Here's my invoice.
Where's my money?
Here's my invoice. You got 7 days. I don't give them a month. 7 days. Dear sir, madam, this invoice is due in 7 days. Yeah, I love doing that.
And what about the other elements of admin that people don't like to do?
Taxes.
Like bookkeeping, taxes, scheduling appointments.
Yeah.
All the logistical kind of things.
I think scheduling appointments and pre-meetings for work with musicians or whatever it is, if they've got an idea, I need that part. I like that part because I need that part of the process. For me to create something for someone, with someone, I need to understand you and what you want as well. It's in my interest to give you what you want. There have been occasions where people are like, do what you do. We trust you. But you'll find that when you're working with some people, it's too much of a risk to just do that because you might give them something that they're not looking for in their head. So I really try and have those pre-meetings with people to really dissect what it is you want. What is your song about? How are you feeling about it? Oh, these visuals could work. If this is a feeling, if I'm resonating with their feelings during this scene or this part of the song, I'll suggest a mood board, pictures and ideas and visual ideas to see what they like. Because I'll always make sure, I feel like when someone wants to work with me, they're using my type of style. I like to work with lovely shadow, lovely lighting, depth in the imagery, really meaningful, scenic stuff. So I'm guessing that they're looking for me for that kind of work.
Right.
So I need to make sure that does this high contrast type of image work for your vision and work for your style? Sometimes I can make people think this is what's going to work really well and people trust it. And then some people are like, I really like this, but I want to go for this kind of aesthetics. So really having those pre-meetings is important to me because if I'm not 100% clear what they want, I can't input anything to make it unique and suggest what can collaborate with those ideas. And if I don't do that, I will never be sure and confident in myself that I'm shooting the right thing for that person.
Right. And
or organization or brand or whatever.
That's it for part 1 in this 2-part interview with Nedim Nazerali. Tune in for episode 3, which will be part 2. If you want to find out more about Ned and see some of his amazing work, find him on Instagram. His handle is Nedim_Nazerali or nartearth. That's NARTEARTH. You can find us at wired_different_official or _wild0. Bye for now.